How's it going, peeps? Welcome back to Viva La Coin. I am Joe. I will be your host for today's episode. And if you can think back in your life at any points when you're just like, hey, this thing is going really well, let's try to not fuck it up, and yet someone comes along and fucks it up. That is exactly what people have tried to do several different times in the history of Bitcoin. Now, originally, I told myself that I wasn't going to talk about the extent of human stupidity that goes into these different changes that people tried to make to Bitcoin in the past. However, I did have some of you reach out to me and ask, hey, Joe, I saw there was another Bitcoin listed on Coinbase, Coinbase Cash. It's a lot cheaper. It says it's an extension of Bitcoin. Should I buy it? And just like people asked about Ethereum Classic, that was that old bastardized fork that got hacked that no one uses, there are issues with these different Bitcoin forks and reasons as to why they were put out into the crypto space. So what I wanted to do real quick before we go into the Binance exchange and the Binance coin as I intended to for our next video, I want to take just a quick couple minutes to explain why you're going to see different versions of Bitcoin on some of these other exchanges, why they exist, and why, in my non-financial advice opinion, they should be avoided at all costs unless your hobbies include not only investing in cryptocurrency, but burning your money faster than you could ever imagine. So let's just jump into it here. Let me just bring that down. So we are going to first take a quick peek into Bitcoin. So right now we are sitting back up in the 49.3 range. So, hey, we're all good. Apocalypse hasn't hit yet. There was some dumping over the course of yesterday evening. Again, we know it is coordinated exchanges and very large mining pools trying to keep the price low. The institutions buy, everyone else panics and sells. They take your Bitcoin, they give you declining US dollars, and everyone is happy, at least the wealthy. So don't fall for that bullshit. Bitcoin's doing just fine. And but I expect us to continue moving forward pretty strong here after this consolidation. But let's talk about some of the other versions of Bitcoin that you're going to see on some of these exchanges, including Coinbase. Now, one of them actually was almost in the top 10 here, Bitcoin Cash. And Bitcoin Cash is essentially a fork of Bitcoin. Now, if you're like me and you're not very tech oriented to begin with and you don't do any type of code, think about fork like Robert Frost's poem where there are two roads that you can take. In both of them, it's not like you rip yourself in half and you just die on the spot. You could go two different directions. Well, Bitcoin split a couple different times where the original, the functional, the useful version continued down one path, and whatever fork of Bitcoin that someone wanted to change something on went in a different direction. So when you're looking at these different forks, they were once originally a part of Bitcoin. And they each have a distinct timeline when they broke off and reason as to why they broke. So for Bitcoin Cash right now, you'll see this listed on Coinbase and several other exchanges. However, they did say that they're going to continue delisting it because it's confusing new people to the space. But what Bitcoin Cash essentially did was back in August 1st, 2017, on block 478,558, because you can see exactly what happens on the blocks. They decided through a bunch of infighting and some of the big people in Bitcoin that were helping to secure the network that Bitcoin was moving too slow. It wasn't holding enough information on each block, and they wanted to just extend the amount of megabytes that would be on that each individual block. They wanted to extend it up to 8 originally. And then there were some talks about extending it to 32 and then beyond. But it was currently, since 2010, at 1 megabyte. So at that point, most people said, let me paraphrase, fuck that. And they said, well, you know what? We're going to do it anyway. So a couple large mining pools from China and a couple big names in Bitcoin just said, hey, screw it, we're going rogue, and they forked off. Now, at that point, everyone that had one Bitcoin and they wanted to transfer over to Bitcoin Cash, they would exchange one Bitcoin for one Bitcoin Cash. So it was a one-for-one transfer, and they were just going their separate ways, and we'll see which one wins. Well, looking back at the graph, in the last bull run, Bitcoin Cash at its peak, if I can get it on there, it was up to like $4,400 was its peak. If you compare it to Bitcoin's current valuation of almost $50,000 currently, $58,000 high, I think it's pretty definitive which fork wound up taking the cake there. Now, part of the issue when they split and they wanted to make it 8 megabytes, they barely even used that fucking space. No one wanted Bitcoin Cash. No one thought it was necessary. And you were already building new functional solutions on top of Bitcoin to make it faster, which is the inception of the Lightning Network, which I'm going to go into in its own video. But Bitcoin is technology, and this is all run by computers. You can upgrade computers. You can build on them. You don't have to just fucking destroy something and make a new version of it inherently. You can build on top of it. So no one was using it. So I believe they were utilizing like just about 2.1% of that limit at its peak. So it's dead. But when I say that we're stretching the limits of human stupidity, we don't stop there. Let's go one further. So then we got Bitcoin SV, which stands for Satoshi's Vision. It is still the 27th ranked cryptocurrency. It was a little bit higher earlier this year, especially in January. It hit a little bit of a pump. But Bitcoin SV was created a little bit later, November 15th, 2018. And it was broken off of block 556,766. So it was separated off just like Bitcoin Cash, but for a separate reason. So there was a couple people that not only wanted to extend the capacity of the blocks further, all the way up to somewhere around the range of 128 megabytes, which obviously, yeah, there's really a need for that. But the guy behind it, Craig Wright, claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto. And he's trying to get everyone to take his Bitcoin white paper down and his information down. And this was his vision for Bitcoin. Now, as you can imagine, someone coming out with that, with not being able to prove it, was very telling how useful Bitcoin SV would be. And just like Bitcoin Cash, it was confusing people and it was fucking people up. And when you did that one-to-one transfer, when you had one Bitcoin Cash and you received that as opposed to one Bitcoin in that split, well, now you took Bitcoin Cash and you received one Bitcoin SV for that one Bitcoin Cash. So it's like you took the greatest performing asset of all time and you split it off and they handed you dog shit instead. And you were like, this is amazing. But what if I could divide that dog shit into wet dog shit? That's what they did. And right now, Bitcoin SV is sitting at about $180 compared to Bitcoin's current $50,000 valuation. I think that speaks for itself. But Craig Wright, you can look up all of his court cases. They're online. But ultimately, let me see. There was just a pretty definitive. He's never proven anything. Here we go. Craig Wright has brought several lawsuits against various figures in cryptocurrency spaces for in some way refuting the notion that he's Satoshi Nakamoto and the true proprietor of Bitcoin. None of the cases have been settled in his favor thus far. So kick and scream all you want and lose everyone as much money as you want. You lost. You're not Satoshi Nakamoto. In my opinion, who knows? He could be, with no way to prove it and wouldn't even try. He would rather just have you take his word for it. But yeah, Bitcoin SV is absolute hot garbage. And then one last one I'm going to cover is Bitcoin Gold. And I'm only going into this because it's still in the top 100, as if we can't kill these fucking things. They're like cockroaches. So this actually was forked off of Bitcoin in that same sort of scene at the end of like Fast and the Furious, where Vin Diesel and Paul Walker drive in different directions. We just keep splitting off Bitcoin. This was October 24th, 2017, and it was on block 491,407. Now, when they split off Bitcoin Gold, this is one of the only ones that I somewhat agree with. The reason for their split is they wanted to break up the mining. So, in essence, and this still happens today, these bigger and bigger mining pools of people getting together and using their collective computing power to mine Bitcoin, to mine Ethereum, they wound up getting a lot of the rewards. And if I just took my laptop and hooked it up with the Bitcoin software and I try and run a node, all I'm going to do is run my electricity bill higher up than those poor people in Texas in the middle of a fucking snowstorm. And they were like, we have to make this more accessible for people. So in this Bitcoin fork, it was supposed to change the algorithms and how you mine Bitcoin so that the previous software, the previous hardware wouldn't work effectively and everyone would have to start from scratch. So I like the premise behind it. Obviously, there were probably some big names behind it that had something to gain from it. I don't think it was altruistic through and through, but I understand the premise. The problem was they utterly fucked up and immediately got hit with the 51% attack, which is the same reason why Bitcoin is so powerful and why no one can stop it. Is the network is so large and so spread out and so decentralized that you would essentially have to take over more than half of those computers in the network across the entire world. And I don't care if it's like China with people say, oh, well, they have a lot of miners and an authoritarian government. That's fine. They still can't hack every computer simultaneously on Earth. That amount of energy and that amount of access is a very difficult thing to come by. So they immediately got hacked, pretty much destroyed a lot of their credibility. And when they first started, one for one Bitcoin for one Bitcoin gold. And I'm sure those people are up at night with their $27.95 Bitcoin golds, wondering what the hell they were thinking back when they did this split, because Jesus fucking Christ, that got to be a tough pill to swallow. But ultimately, I just wanted to cover these couple offshoots of Bitcoin. And I mentioned it in kind of a throwaway statement with Ethereum Classic. You're going to see different versions of things splitting off from different cryptocurrencies, different forks. And you want to make sure that you're aware that, oh, Bitcoin SV, it's only $200. That's a discount. No, it's not, because it's not the same thing. So when these different projects come out, or sometimes it will go in reverse. Like you'll have some cryptocurrencies, like there was both Elrond and Aave, two different cryptocurrencies that deal with network and lending. They took, let's say, 1,000 of each cryptocurrency and compressed it down into one to lessen the amount. So it can go in either direction when you're either trying to fork off different things or compress the total circulating supply. But ultimately, it's important to pay attention. They aren't the same. This information is public and available. It's just people don't know to look for it. And the last thing I'm going to see is someone come in with their savings or something that they're like, hey, I'm excited to get into cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Let me put it all on the table, Bitcoin Cash to the moon, because you'd be fucked. Aside from that, I appreciate you for joining me on this episode of Viva La Coin. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If you could, please share this video so that your friend doesn't buy a lifetime supply of Bitcoin SV that they're not going to be able to do anything with. And leave a like as well on that video. Until next time, I will talk to you later. Viva La Coin.